Hi, this is really interesting, but it's so hard to get our head around. I don't know why. Maybe it's the terms we use here. So let's try to make it easier on ourselves to know how do we know something is alive, because your teacher is going to obviously ask you this at some stage, and you're expected to understand this from now on. Alright, what scientists look at, we make these observations and we look at all these things to try to work out how things work and what's happening. Alright, so we call those sort of things processes. So sometimes the processes are hidden, so we look at what we see happening. We see behaviours and we see organs, and we've cut open things before, we've seen organs and systems. But what we're essentially looking at are the characteristics or processes that happen. And we use those to decide if something is alive. Okay? So I need you to concentrate on the processes. Don't concentrate on anything else. I'm giving you examples on the way through. So let's look at these processes one at a time. Now I've set them up in alphabetical order. So A is for assimilate. Now assimilate means you take something and you make it into your own body. It sounds really gross, doesn't it? It sounds terrible. But what it really means is we take food in, we break it down, we take all the good stuff out of it that we want, and then we use it to grow. So in other words, we use it to make body cells. And this is what assimilate means, and this is what one of the things we need to remember. If an animal or plant or anything cannot assimilate, in other words, take in foods and make it into their own body parts, then we have a problem. Now, of course, when we do it, we have to break food apart into their basic building blocks, then take those basic building blocks and then build the body part we want. But that's still assimilation. And I'd like you to remember that. Right, E stands for excrete. Excrete means to remove. So when we take in all that food and water, now it's quite obvious it is, but when in our lives we're doing things and just doing our normal keeping alive business, we make solid, liquid and gas. Now, the liquid is obvious. We have to go to the washroom and pee quite often, right? But we also put liquid through our skin. When we perspire and sweat, we are putting through waste products through our skin. So please be mindful of that. Solids is obvious when we go to the washroom again. Gases. Now before you go crazy with this, I want you to think about the fact that we also breathe. So we breathe in oxygen, it goes into our bodies, goes around, is used, and out pops carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is a waste, right? So it comes out, and that's there. So our excretion system is our skin, our bladder, our kidneys, our lungs. We use lots of things to help us get rid of these things. Now, the reason we want waste removed is because if they let them build up, that would be a problem for us. So we don't. So as it says down at the bottom, when someone uses the word excretion, we are talking about removing the wastes. Right, G stands for grow. And I've also added the word mature here. In other words, we know that a lot of animals have a life cycle, like down here, where we start off with an egg, grows into a chicken, becomes an adult who lays eggs, which grow into a chicken, which become adults who lays eggs, and we keep going. And that is why it's called a life cycle. We also have a life cycle when we're born, when we're young people, when we're teenagers, when we're adults. And the adults get together to make babies. So we go through this with it. Now, a lot of life, when we're talking about grow, people talk about getting taller. So I'll put this sample here of growing. Now there's also something else going on here. We start off with no leaves, no leaves. There's a leaf starting to pop out. There's another leaf starting to pop out, and there's real leaves here. So this thing not only grew bigger, it also grew new parts as well. Alright, that making some sense, I hope? Movement is obvious, right? Animals' movement is obvious. Any animal is able to bound around or do things. But it's a bit more subtle with plants. So it doesn't have to be actually moving from one spot to another. There are other types of movement we can have. And I want you to think about that on the way through. I'll give you a hint. Have you ever touched a fern leaf and watched it curl up? Maybe that's movement too. Right, R is for reproduction. R has also got another one, which we'll look at reproduction first. Now, reproduction is super important because we make new versions of ourselves or new species. We are any group of animal or plant or whatever living thing that is so closely related, we call it a species. And so it can reproduce by doing this, making copies of itself, or it can make slight variations. Now there's a few things going on in here that we don't need to know yet, but just put it this way, we're making new organisms and we can do it by several methods, and we do it by several methods, and that ensures that our species or our type of organism keeps going. R is also for respiration, and respiration really is about turning food into energy, and we use oxygen with it to help it, and our waste products, these are wastes, are water and carbon dioxide. And this energy is used to help us move, help us live, help us grow, help us fix up any parts of our body that need fixing up, all sorts of things. Right? Now, don't forget that things have to be taken in for us to happen. Like we've got to take nutrients or food, so the glucose has to be taken in. Isn't that assimilation or eating? Oxygen has to be taken in, and that's breathing. So you can see that breathing is a part of respiration, but it is not respiration. Remember, respiration is about this thing here, energy. Food into energy. All right? And that means we're also going to need, if we're doing respiration, we're going to need somehow a way of getting rid of all these waste products. Otherwise, we'd be very bloated if we didn't get rid of all of our water. We would look like a big balloon filled with water, and we'd slosh everywhere. And if we couldn't get rid of our carbon dioxide, our balloon would be more inflated. So luckily for us, we can do those sort of things. Lucky last is R for responded to their surroundings. Now, this sometimes can be called sensitivity. And what it means is simply we look at able to pick information from our surroundings and then react to it. All right? If it's too hot, we go and find some shade, things like that. Now, animals have a variety of, and living things have a variety of senses. Some animals simply respond to light. There are worms and other living things that respond to light. Some move towards it, some move away. They don't all have eyes, they don't all have ears, they don't all have noses. Most of them have skin or some sort of external covering which they help use. We don't normally have a lot of mouths though either. It's for tasting. Right, some living things respond to sound. We know there are certain living things that use echolocation, so that could be a way we could talk about responding to their surroundings. Most living things respond to temperature changes, and some living things respond to that wonderful force that keeps us on the earth called gravity. So I hope that makes it a bit clearer about how we go about recognising whether something is living. Be minded though, be reminded that they must do every last one of those 7 things to be called living. If they do 6 of them and can't do the 7th, they're non-living. If they have 5 and have 2 that they can't do, non-living. They must have all 7. And that's the only trick with it. You have to remember that everything must be able to do all 7 to be classed as living. I hope that helps you.